Take uno. So, guys, can you stop laughing? So, guys, baby,
come on, get it ready.
So, guys, last year in January, Risa and I shot a video titled Fitness Couple Q&A, and we answered a bunch of questions about one another, and one of the questions we answered was about parenting. So we thought we'd shoot a video just describing how it is we parent, because I was born and raised in the States, she was born in Japan, raised in the States, now lives in Japan. There's a lot of mixed kind of cultural... We have an interesting blend of cultures in our house, so we thought shooting a video explaining how we parent might be interesting to you guys. So here we go. So for starters, when we moved into this house, which was February 2020, just before the pandemic hit, in fact, like 10 days before the pandemic hit,
Crazy.
It was pretty wild. One of the things we did was sit down as a family and try to combine all of our shared values. So my parents were born and raised in Kenya. I was born and raised in the States. She was born in Japan, raised in the States. Josh and Luna born in Japan, raised in Japan. And now Jasmine, born in Japan, will presumably be raised in Japan and probably the States. So anyways, there's a kind of big mix there, in particular with my kind of Kenyan upbringing in the house, and then living in the States, and then Risa's Japanese upbringing in an American environment kind of thing. So we wanted to figure out a way to combine those well, and so what we did is we sat down as a family, and myself, Risa, Josh, and Luna, who at the time were 8 and 10, we all wrote down a list of, I think it was 5 values that were important to us. And we actually did it in a kind of interesting way. We wrote down values that were American, Kenyan, and Japanese. Obviously, Josh, Luna, and Risa had no idea what Kenyan values are. My understanding of Kenyan values extends as far as having a Kenyan mother and father, and then a huge, obviously, Kenyan family. But, you know, I wasn't born and raised in Kenya, so it's kind of limited. But anyways, we decided to sit down and kind of write down the values, and then we decided to combine them into the family values. Dun, 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 dun. So these are the family values. I don't know if you guys can see these, but I'll get a closer shot hopefully later and show you these. But do you want to read them out?
Sure. So our family values are love, nature, helpfulness, education, thoughtfulness, trying our best, the pursuit of happiness, respect, individuality, which Josh wasn't able to say.
Indubitabity.
And health.
And health. So what we did is we took each of our 10 and we condensed them into this list of family values. And so these are values that we've all agreed on as being things that are important enough to make them family values. And then what we did, to keep it simple, is we took these values and we said, okay, based on these values, let's make some family rules. And so we sat down again with the 4 of us and we kind of wrote down like what should be the rules. And so obviously kids, like obvious rules were like they want snacks each day. They obviously wanted to be like minimal chores. They wanted the respective sibling to get punished really harshly if they like punched them or stole something or, you know, were annoying or any of those things. Which was like, it was really fun to kind of work through all the scenarios together and then have them share what they thought was appropriate. And then obviously Mom and me had the final say on what rules we would go with. We've made tons of changes, obviously. So we made these rules 2 years ago. Lots has changed since then, and we continue to kind of change and reform the rules. But what I think is actually really cool is we haven't changed the values. And I'll periodically ask the kids, like, hey guys, do you think we should change the family values? They'll look over at the board, which we keep over there, and they'll look at it and be like, oh, no, I think they're okay. I'm like, cool. So it's actually really cool knowing that, you know, 2 years have passed, nothing has changed yet in terms of the values we consider to be kind of core family values, despite the fact that the rules have changed a bunch.
Yeah.
So when I was a child, I didn't really have any say as to what would happen when things happened. And I think your upbringing was probably the same. Like if something happened, you didn't have a say on, you know, what kind of consequence you'd experience as a result of that. It just would happen to you.
What do you mean?
Right? So, like, if you got into a fight with your sister, what happened?
I mean, I rarely fought with my sister, so there wasn't really a scene where that actually happened. In the case that we did, I think my either my dad would step in and be like, that is not happening, that's not okay, end of story.
Yeah.
And it'll just be like pouty and fussy and like giving each other the look, but we couldn't really do anything about it because Dad said that's
well, what would happen if Dad said like that's enough and then you guys didn't stop fighting? What?
Okay, well, I mean, we'll probably be like left outside, or I mean, like it wouldn't be nice. I mean,
fair enough.
It's not fun.
I feel like in the interest of not saying anything incriminating, we're just gonna leave it there. On my side, I'm probably more open. So on my side, mom and dad Kenyan, we went with straight up spanking standard, and this is how it worked. I would do something wrong, whether it's come home like too late. I mean, obviously it depends on the severity of whatever I did, but let's say it's something more egregious, like, you know, broke a window because I was being an idiot and like, you know, did something that wasn't necessarily a mistake, but was kind of just like playing soccer in the house. Classic. Shouldn't do it. Kids shouldn't do it. Boys do it all the time. You know, I've caught Josh doing it all the time. And let's say I break a window or I break a vase or something that's important in the house. So it's like really my fault, right? Mom comes home from work, basically tells me like what happened. I tell her what happened. It's, you know, pretty standard. Wait until your father comes home. Dad comes home. He says, basically this is the conversation. He says, Menya, what happened? And I say, I was playing soccer in the house. I mean, obviously I tried to lie and stuff, which just didn't work. So I eventually just learned to just say the truth, which is I think why I'm such a straight talker now. I think I like wasn't lying to my parents was just like not okay.
You weren't allowed to?
No. I mean, you weren't allowed to, obviously, but they were also just really good at like knowing if I was lying. So I don't recall lying a lot as a kid. I feel like they would just see through me, and then it would be worse. Anyways, so you know, Dad would say what happened. I say, Dad, I was playing soccer in the house. I wasn't supposed to, and I broke the whatever. My dad says, he says, what do we call, this is his phrase is, what do we call that? And I don't remember how we got here, but it's basically, what do we call that? And I would say, disobedience. And that word, disobedience, was a strong word. And say, okay, go get the belt. And then I would, you know, go off to Dad's closet, you know, move aside the shirts, find the little belt rack, and then I would select the weapon of choice for my ass whooping. Which was, I mean, we had a lot of varieties. It was like the thick leather belt. It was the thin, really...
So which one hurt?
They were different. So basically the thick ones had like a wider, obviously, surface area, but they were slower. So it would be like less sharp, if you can imagine. But the thinner ones were obviously faster, but thinner. It kind of just depends. Honestly, I think I often went with the middle of the road or bigger, as opposed to smaller. Because the smaller it was, the more like sharp and cutting it was, kind of. And details here. The trauma. Can you just like the trauma? So anyway, long story short, my parents resolved my doing things wrong by having conversations with me, obviously, like explaining what happened and all that, which was great. But largely, when I was little, especially, probably definitely before as a teenager, so probably stopped at like maybe 10 or 11 years old, but spanking was just like common practice, as it is in Kenya and probably many countries around the world still. So having been raised getting spanked, I knew that I didn't want to spank my kids. Like, it's just not something I want to do. We decided to use the family values as our kind of foundation for how we build rules, and then fundamentally allow the kids to have direct input in what would happen when XYZ happens. What do you think about it overall?
I think it took the kids a while to adjust to the whole concept of following values and having like really not strict but clear guidelines as to what would happen. I never had that kind of structure when I was a child, so obviously going into parenting and having kids, obviously I'll try to parent them the best I could, but there wasn't a strict, this happens when X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And so I think that was a lot of new adjustments for the kids, but eventually I feel like because they really value the family values, they're able to respect the family and our decisions in doing the consequences.
Which, for reference, are things like washing the dishes or
yeah.
We had like timeouts, which we haven't done a timeout in like a year.
Yeah, we stopped doing timeouts.
They just haven't been necessary.
Yeah.
It was like timeouts or having to do the dishes or like put away the dishes, like pretty simple stuff.
We've learned to become more respectful and more within society. I feel like they're capable of doing more adult things.
Oh, and I do want to say one thing that I found really interesting is basically being raised in a Kenyan house, like a black house in the States, getting spanked is really common. And so like for you viewers out there who are obviously black, like you were probably spanked too, and like that's really common practice for us. So I actually had huge doubts about the effectiveness of like timeouts and that whole thing, because like I didn't experience that in my childhood. My friends did. Do you remember this? My friends did. I was like, what is a timeout?
What is a timeout?
What is a timeout?
Where are we without the belt?
Why would that be a thing? Like, why would you?
We had a lot of conversations about that.
It made me actually ask myself, like, why would a kid, make different decisions based on having to like go to his or her room for 30 minutes, where like he or she could just play with toys or whatever. Like, I don't know. Anyways, that was my take on it. But actually now having done that and, applied other things like, again, the dishes and etc., it's worked out pretty well. They've come so far in such a short period of time based on these values and the rules we built, which is really impressive. Yeah. So more than anything, to be honest, I'm surprised by how effective... This was my idea. Doing the values board was actually my idea. I don't know where it came from. It was just something that I thought we should do as a family. But I'm actually surprised by how effective it has been. And what I really like about it is how it continues to evolve as the kids grow and evolve. So when Luna turns 16, like she's probably going to have slightly different values at that age. But they probably won't be very different from what we have here. Like one or two of them may change, but I don't imagine they're going to all, completely change. And I think that's the power of kind of centering our structure around shared values.
Yeah, and I feel like when something happens and we don't, or there's a disagreement, right? Say Luna doesn't want to read her book. Obviously she loves reading, so this would never actually happen. Josh might actually be a better example for this. But let's say Josh doesn't want to read his book. He's like, I want to go to bed. And we say, all right, Josh, why don't you want to read your book? You have homework, right? He goes, well, I'm too sleepy. Yeah. So we come back to the family values, say, okay, so we do recognize that we agree that education is very relevant and it's important for us. And we have that whole conversation. And eventually he's like, yeah, that's true. And then so like instead of telling him what to do and like being a top-down structure, it allows us to communicate with the children in a way of making them realize instead of telling them what to do, which is what I really appreciate about the Family Values Board most.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so I think instead of the classic, because I said so, I think I've probably actually said that a few times, but like kind of almost like jokingly, because I think it's ridiculous to just say because I said so. So sometimes I've said it like almost sarcastically or humorously with the kids. Right? But in general, it's great the way we do it.
Parents, because it takes so much effort and time having that conversation.
Exactly.
Even if it's like 10 minutes, you have to like sit down and
have
look
a conversation.
Look at the kid and like actually have a heart-to-heart, and that takes a lot of effort.
It's so much easier to like just go do the thing.
Yeah, so like saying because I said so, like I completely get why that happens.
Exactly.
But in the long run, it's very vague, and so it doesn't really change anything, and you just keep coming back to that point,
My parents are very compassionate overall, and like I'm very happy with how I was parented overall. Would have liked to not be spanked, but it happened. But I love that there's really clear conversation. And one of the things that kids have said, this is what I was thinking. One of the things that kids have said to us, which I really appreciate, is most times they were basing this on friends, their friends. Most times kids don't know why they're being punished; they just get punished because like they don't exactly understand what's going on. But in our house, I'm a huge like clarity person. Everything's really, really clear, so there's no ambiguity or confusion.
I'm curious to know what other people do in their households.
Same.
parent kids.
Like, is this a common thing?
I don't.
Like, I have no
I've
idea
never seen this before.
What prompted me to think of doing this together.
I mean, like, culturally, Japan is a very, like, closed. You don't really have conversations. You should know, like, kuki o yonde toka, like,
which means read the air.
Read the air.
Exactly. Which, to take it further, means like you should just know based on what's going on around
you. Or like just shame on you and sort of ends there.
Yeah.
Maybe feel like it's very different in the Western society. So I think there's a lot of styles of parenting. There's no right or wrong. I'm really curious to know what how they've been parented, or how you've been parented, or how you parent your kids.
Or if you don't even have kids, like how you think you would parent when you do have children. Well, guys, thanks for watching, and please comment below. Let us know what you do. I'd love to know. Again, more than for me, is this normal? Like, do people create family value boards? Is that a thing? Do people make rules together with their kids? Is that a thing? You know, what do you guys do? What's common, you know, in your respective culture, whether you're here in Japan, you're in the States, or you're somewhere else? Is spanking still a big thing? I actually am really curious about that as well. Like, is my generation like the last of the we get spanked generations, or is that still really common? Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.